Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Wrestling Issues Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Gaither. My guest today is Jack Spates. Jack is a former Division I national champion in his own right. He was a two-time finalist, and he was a head coach at Cornell for a while, and he was also a longtime head coach of Oklahoma University. He coached some amazing wrestlers, and I've always wanted to talk to him. So without any further ado, let's bring him in. Hey, Coach, how you doing?
Doing great, Tim, and glad to be with you. I must modify that. I was a college national champion. So back in ancient history, they had a college division, which was Division III, Division II, many of the Division I schools, and that was college division. And then if you qualified, you went to the D1s. So I was college national champion and D1 runner-up.
Okay, I got you. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, back then you could wrestle if you were like the D2 or D3 national champ, you could wrestle in the Division 1 tournament. Is that correct?
It is correct. And you had guys like Gary Barton was third in the college division. A week and a half later, he was D1 national champ. That was true of Donnie Roan as well. And so it was very, very competitive. Cal Poly, Northern Iowa. I mean, many of the D1 great schools. Clarion was, they were third or fourth in the D1s. They went with four guys and had three national champions. Unofficially, because you couldn't score as a team, but they were literally third or fourth in the D1s. And I don't think they won the college division that year. Cal Poly did. So it was very tough.
And that's how someone like Carlton Hasselrig was able to win 6 titles, right?
That's true. Carlton Hasselrig won three college division, three D1s, and frankly, he was one of the great all-time heavyweights.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Anyone who doesn't know that is not doesn't follow college wrestling that well because did he pass away, Carlton?
He did. And they either don't know wrestling or they're puppies. You'd
Yeah.
be surprised. Mention Wade Chalice, mention Stan Desick, Wayne Wells to a lot of these young guys. They don't know who they are.
Yeah, a lot of them think. I mean, I have all the respect in the world for Ben Askren, but Wade Chalice did it first.
he was a funkster as well. That's true.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to kind of start this podcast by talking about one of your former wrestlers who's having a hard time right now, Bo Manus. Um,
Yeah.
he was a Kansas guy, and he was a few years younger than me, but he was so amazing. I mean, I had him on my podcast, and if I'm correct, he did not lose to a Kansas guy for 15 years. Like he lost, I think he was 6 years old wrestling 8 and under, and he took some losses that first year, and I think he placed at state as like a 5-year-old. And then he rattled off like, including high school, I want to say 14 state titles.
Yeah.
And his closest match in high school, if I'm remembering correctly, was 6-0, and that was against another 4-timer. What went into recruiting Bo, and what do you remember the most about him as a competitor?
Oh, great kid, great family. I'll tell you a funny recruiting story. So you remember Whit Durden?
I
Whit was
don't.
four-time Georgia state champion, national Fargo runner-up, several placings. And I'm not sure he had been beaten in Georgia. And we're recruiting him, and he commits to us. And I'm like, Whit, this is great. We're excited to have you. Going to do great things together. And he calls me back a half hour later and says, Coach Spates. I said, what's up, Whit? Are you recruiting Bo Manus? I said, well, actually, we are. And Bo just committed to us. I said, what's your concern, that you're going to be the same weight? He says, yes. I said, Whit, when we were in your house, we were practically feeling you up. We were asking a billion questions, seeking to assure that you guys would be at different weights because we couldn't have made that kind of commitment to two guys at the same weight. He said, what are you recruiting us for? Because you have to understand, Bo beat him about 3 times. And Whit almost never got beat, right? So anyway, we said, well, we're recruiting for Bo for 118 and you for 126. Oh, yeah, 126 was the weight. And he said, but Bo wrestled 125 this year and I wrestled 119. I said, we know that, Whit, but here's the deal. Bo is a man. He's physically mature. His parents are like his dad was maybe 5'4", his mom 5'1". I said, you're a boy. You're going to continue to grow. Your growth plate, your parents assured us by the doctor, has not even closed yet. Your dad's 6'1". So we're quite confident that you'll be different weights. Well, he wound up committing to us, came to OU. Bo wrestled 118 or the equivalent when it went up, and Whit wrestled the weight above him all 4 years. They became best friends. They roomed together, and they were best men in each other's wedding. And now
Wow.
that Bo, for our listeners, has pancreatic cancer at stage 4, and Whit was flying in with his wife. The flight got canceled. He sent her back. He drove in from West Virginia. We had Tommy Grossman and Rowdy Lundgren, 2 teammates, come in, stayed here, and we had several gatherings before he began chemo treatment. So Bo is a follower of Christ. He has peace. He has hope. He's eager to live, but he's also eager to glorify Christ, whether in life or in death. And that's the kind of hope and peace and joy that you can have when you know Jesus.
Yeah, my mother passed away around 6 months ago, and that's the only thing that got me through it was I had decided that he was either going to deliver a miracle or he was going to take her home, and that's the only thing that allowed me to not lose my mind during that. So I 100% agree with that, and we'll be praying for him, and if anybody can beat it, it's him. And
Yes. I'll
um,
say this, you asked about him as a wrestler. He was a fierce competitor, a little on the small side, but very powerful. I remember national duels. We beat a tough West Virginia team. Now we've got Iowa State, and he gets 5 pointed to start the match and comes roaring back and beats the guy, and that propels us to Iowa. We beat them in the semis and then lost to Okie State in the finals. But he was a great competitor, Big 12 champion, beat an NCAA champion in the finals, and very proud of Bo Manus.
so he had to move up to 125. Is that right?
Well, only when the weight class moved up. And I
Right.
tell people, because people will say, it's a shame they don't have that low weight. They do have that lower weight. 125 is 118, which sounds funny, but what I mean by this, under the new rules, you can't use plastics, you can't use saunas, you got to certify, for the weight, hydrated, and with a 1 hour weigh-in, now 2 hour weigh-in, there's no way you can cut the kind of weight. Now, it does hurt some people. A guy like TJ Hill, and others would have been monsters at the weight below. I think Bo may have made the weight below. So it did hurt some people, but most 118 pounders could never compete at 118 under those rules. Does that make sense?
Sure. Like Barry Davis could have never wrestled 118 under these rules.
Yeah, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. He was a really big 18. And it does seem like, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like 118 is like it was like a shorter, stockier weight class. I mean, some of those guys, especially watching them, I was like, how does that guy make 118 pounds? Eric Aiken and those guys, I grew up kind of idolizing Eric Aiken. But yeah, those guys, Sammy Henson, it was just a great weight class. But yeah, it's a good thing they changed those rules for sure.
Now there were exceptions because I was 5'9", and that's what I wrestled. Nick Simmons, of course, was a monster, but a lot of short, powerful, extremely fast guys.
You were a 5'9", 118 pounder.
I was, yep.
Wow.
And people are surprised because I'm a little porky now, but I'm very small bone. Most people can put their hand around my forearm all the way up here, and narrow shoulders. So now I couldn't make 118 again, but I could be a lot lighter.
We all could. I wanted to ask this: what goes into recruiting? Like, there's so many good wrestlers in the country, especially back then. Like, even though both like Bo, for example, was a four-time undefeated state champ, and he didn't give up a takedown in high school. That's how dominant he was. But what goes into the recruiting? Like, how do you find what's a good fit for your program?
Yeah. So first of all, you want to, for the most part, bring in good character, good attitude guys. If you have a team full of those, you can bring in some guys a little on the edge, and they'll bring them along. But uh, some of the years that we weren't as successful as I failed in doing that, and then I also, rather than draw the line, and if you cross it, you're gone, bend it a little bit because you're trying to help people, you wind up not helping, you wind up enabling. Okay, so you want good attitude, you want good character, you want self determination. The best guys are the guys, they want it in and of themselves. Lou Holt says he doesn't worry about motivation, he recruits it. So if you get the guys that want it in and of themselves, you don't have to lead them to the wrestling room, you don't have to lead them to the road. So that attitude, that passionate desire to be great. Now you will have guys that don't have that. There are a secondary tier of guys who don't have that, but they will do what you tell them to do. Whereas others, you could leave them in the wrestling room, and if you have a 5 hour practice, they'll wrestle for 5 hours. You have a 1 hour practice, they'll wrestle for the hour, but not with that passion and intensity. Okay, or that passionate desire to learn. So you want to bring in guys, athletic ability is huge. But the neat thing about folk style wrestling is you can bring in guys that didn't have great athletic ability and were still great. Top wrestling enables that in folk style. Great stance and position enables that. So, but for the most part, if you can get those great athletes, you can get them even late. A guy like Leon Crump demonstrates that. Started wrestling in 10th grade, 2-2 at the high school nationals, got pinned twice, was 1-0 against Mako in NCAA wrestling, and was 1-2 against Tommy Rowlands. I would say won on a very bad call, but he was fourth and third in the NCAA, a Louisiana guy who was not great. I had a coach say to me, "What'd you recruit him for?" If you know the voice, you'll know that was Dennis DeLito from Fresno State. He said, "He's not any good." I said, "I didn't recruit him because he's good. I recruited him because I think he could be real good." And he was. So, but Leon's wasn't a guy to do all of it on his own, but if you made him do it, he would do it. Another thing, learning. You have to have guys that want to learn. And there are guys, and I think this is so important. Are you familiar with the phrase HEW?
No, sir.
HEW has had enough wrestling. And you all know, guys, they had it all. And by the time they're seniors in high school or seniors in college, they are just not the same. They have HEW. Well, one of the things, when you stop learning, and there are bundles of college guys even, they don't learn a lot. And so they're doing the same thing every day, every day. When you learn, a guy grabs your wrist, you do an outside step, wrist lead, duck under. You learn when the guy's forcing you up a body, you do an inside trip. When you continue to learn, it's fun. It keeps you fresh, it keeps you alert, and it helps you get better. So I'm a big believer. I know some people, you get a couple of things, you do it right. I'm a big believer in continuing to learn, not only for your excellence on the mat, but for your mental frame of mind. Continuing to have fun, be eager, be excited. So those are some of the key things in recruiting. You want attitude and character. You want that passionate desire to excel in and of yourself. You want athleticism. You want learning, and you got to catch some breaks too. We've had some guys who would have been all-time greats. David Kelgard, who had all the tools, showed it immediately, and then was injured so many times and never was able to do what he could have done.
Yeah, there's a lot of injury stories like that. I think I'd never heard that term before, but I think I was probably an HEW wrestler.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was a high school state champion, but that was my goal, and that's what I wanted to do. And I had an undefeated season, and then I did wrestle a couple years in college, but my heart was never in it.
Uh-huh.
And if your heart's not in it, then you're not gonna, especially at college, it's so tough. Um, so yeah, I tried to get it back, like that spark or whatever. I never
Yeah,
felt it again. It was like it took so much out of me doing that.
yeah,
Um, that I remember by towards the end of the season, I just wanted it to be over, and then I did go ahead and wrestle and beat some good guys and learn some good things in college. But you know, I, everyone has things they wish they could do over, and that's certainly one of the things that I wish I could do over. But at the same time, I always try to tell myself when I have any um, lamentations about the past that if I had done anything differently, my little boy wouldn't be here, who I wouldn't trade for anything.
sure.
So, I might have another kid, but I wouldn't have him. And so that's just kind of how I try to look at life. But I do wish that I would have just focused on getting better and learning how to score points. Um, but maybe if my boy ever wrestles, that'll be the case. But he told me a couple days ago that he doesn't really like it, and that he finds it kind of boring. He's only 7.5, so I kind of wish I had waited a little while to even take him to a practice. Um, and that was one of my questions. Do you ever see? I mean, I know the answer to this actually, but um, do you ever see kids that have zero interest in it when they're young, and then find that interest when they get a little older? Because I don't want to force anything on him, but
Yep,
I would love it if he wrestled, because
yep,
it's one of the few things I know a fair amount about. And
yep.
so,
Well, let me share a story, and then I'll answer it more directly. So I desperately wanted my boys to wrestle. Some
okay,
people wrestle's fine. No, no. I wanted my boys to wrestle, but I wanted them to wrestle because they wanted to wrestle. So I employed a reverse psychology. I wouldn't let them wrestle, but I would work with them technically. Okay, you might work with your boy technically in terms of it's always good to have self defense. Okay, now my boys wanted to, so that wasn't the problem. But I would stand, on a rug with knee pads or on a mat when we got it, and single, 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 high crotch, one after the other, and going around me, high crotch, duck, duck, drag, drag, and so they're getting the skills. Then I would let them practice. Initially, I didn't even let them practice with people, but it's creating that hunger. Then I let them practice, but I wouldn't let them compete. When Jeremy was 10 years old, he came to me and he said, Dad, he said, there's a tournament. I'd really like to go in it. I said, we're going to wait one more year, Jeremy. He went to his mom. He said, Mom, the registration fee is $7. He said, I have $10. He said, I could pay the registration fee myself. And if you could talk Dad into letting me go, you could have the other $3. So it created that hunger, and they were both great wrestlers. And I would say this: one, if your boy's not interested, don't make him. Don't make him. But you may say, hey, we're going to work together, so you learn some wrestling skills, because it's always important for self defense. And then praise and praise and praise and praise. Maybe have your wife film him so he can see himself on film. Okay. He's getting a feel for it. He's learning. So if there ever is a day, he's not behind. The second thing is sometimes kids are a little meeker. Okay. And they're not, they don't have that toughness to jump into wrestling. I would tell them, get him in judo, get him in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, because judo is way more about just technique. Okay, you can have a little pudgy guy and he can still learn the techniques. Okay, he may not like getting hammered in the head, but he can do the techniques. And once again, he'll learn balance, he'll learn how to learn, he'll learn techniques. And what happens is if he starts wrestling, he's going to do a whole lot better. So those are some things I recommend to parents. If a kid's a little meeker, or if he doesn't want to wrestle, there are some skills that would help him. Okay, and he could buy into those. We're not going to go to practice. You don't have to compete, but I want you to learn some skills just for self-defense reasons. And he's doing it with you. He's bonding with you. See, and you can stand there and have him do all those techniques on you, and he may get an affinity for it.
yeah, when it's just he and I, and we just wrestle around, just playing around, he does things that I'm like, I didn't teach him that. and it's just natural to him. But then when it comes to like wrestling other little kids, he like doesn't want to touch them, and he just kind of he just kind of dances around, you know. And but he's a total little athlete. I mean, he's 7.5 and can throw a football better than me. And when he was little, he I mean, he's still little, but he would shoot baskets as like a 2-year old. And I wish I had some of these things on film because he never missed a full size goal with a full ball. He would just shoot and make these. He would make like 18 out of 22 shots, and it was the ugliest shot ever. My mom was a basketball player, so I guess that's kind of in him. But and he's just kind of lost interest in shooting baskets now too. And I like have to make him play catch and. Uh,
Oh,
but I yeah.
he's a baseball player, so there's nothing wrong with choosing another sport, or maybe he's a musician, or maybe, so what you want to do is introduce. So my youngest son, Justin, he's wrestling, and he eventually starts wrestling. He started earlier than Jeremy because it was just easy to bring them both, and he wanted to wrestle passionately. And well, one day I think we're wrestling Michigan State, and my wife calls and said, Justin doesn't want to go to practice. He doesn't want to wrestle. I said, well, don't make him. I'll talk to him when I come home. I said, Just, what's up? He said, I don't want to wrestle anymore, not having fun. I said, well, Justin, I've told you all your life you don't have to wrestle. I said, but there's a couple of things you need to understand. One, life is not about just having fun, okay? It's about using your gifts and abilities to accomplish great things. Just having fun is like eating cotton candy. It's nice, but it doesn't fill you, it doesn't sustain you, and ultimately, that's not fun either, okay? Secondly, you're going to get involved in something else. You're not going to just rollerblade all day, which he wanted to do, okay? So you're going to get involved in Boy Scouts. You're going to get involved in basketball. I don't care. You can choose, but you're going to get involved in some other things as well.
Okay.
So the weekend came. We had a big match. I said, what are you going to do? Oh, I'm going to wrestle. But if I made him, it would have been miserable. So there are things that you can do, like that technique stuff, and he'll get it. So I can have self-defense. Maybe a kid grabs him, he takes him down. Maybe it's, hey, Dad, maybe I'd like to wrestle. So maybe not.
Okay. Well, I'm in no hurry. We'll see. And I just want him to enjoy what he's doing. And
Yeah,
again, if he's not good, if that's not what he wants to do, I mean, wrestling is hard, even if you're great at it. So
it is.
we'll see. Well, there's no hurry. I just want him to develop the life skills that he wants to. I want him to pursue what he wants to pursue, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So we'll just take it slow and see. And there's definitely no way I'm going to put him in a tournament or anything right now. And
Right.
that would be bad for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk some about your own career. How old were you when you started wrestling? And did you have success right away? And just tell me about it.
Well, mine is a funny and somewhat unique story. I grew up in New York City. We didn't have wrestling. I was very successful in speech and debate, third in the city, very successful. I was in a really good band, rock band, and loving life. And now all of a sudden we move out to Long Island. My new school doesn't have speech and debate. That's gone. I'm the worst member of the best kids band around. That's gone. And plus, I find out rather than being 6 foot, 200 pounds on stage where I'm a big deal, I'm actually 5 foot, 90 pounds. I'm nobody and nothing. I mean, gym class, the gym teacher says, you're Spats. I said, Spates. He said, you signed up for the wrestling team. I said, no. And it turns out some friends of mine signed me up. The teacher, the coach, he's a phys ed teacher, and I find out he's the assistant wrestling coach. They're always looking for little guys. He talks me into coming out, but now I have something to grab onto. I tell my parents, I don't find out then, but they go in bed, they laugh. But because I have nothing to grab onto, now I do. I start working like a madman. Push-ups, sit-ups, running. My dad eventually puts mat on top of. A guy showed me a sit-out turn-in. I did 100 of them. My dad put rug on top of rug. Now we have wrestling mats. I'm constantly getting kids to come over. It's all I do. So I was 10-4. that first year, fourth in the state, my second year, and undefeated state champ and third in the junior nationals my third year. As a non-athlete and as a new wrestler, but who fell in love with the art and science of wrestling.
Huh. That's cool. So that was yours. So you started as a sophomore.
Yep, I started, it was either October or November of my sophomore year. The first wrestling match I saw was the one I was in. So
That's awesome. And then who recruited you the most out of high school?
yeah, so I was a one-time state champ, and that wasn't that much in vogue. And plus, I wrestled 107 as a senior. So Wilkes recruited me; they were real tough. Slippery Rock recruited me, and they were really tough. But Cal Poly recruited me not be, and this is back when Cal Poly won over 100 straight California matches. They won bundles of college national championships, top 5, top 6, top 7 in the D1s. But the only reason they recruited me is someone paid for me to go to a wrestling camp at Michigan State. My coach was coaching there. And the coach saw me. He saw my work ethic. He saw my attitude. I worked out with a guy named Randy Miller, who was on the junior world team. And Randy was a monster wrestler. And he beat me, but I was really competitive with him, just having started wrestling essentially the year before. And so the coach recruited me to Cal Poly. And he told me they had a guy who was third in the D1s, but he had graduated. Well, they also had a redshirt freshman the year I'm in high school who tied him in the ranking match, and 6 other 118 pounders. So that guy was coming down from 140, shaved twice a day, full chest of hair. I weigh 115, and I'm walking around going, "Hi," right? And I eventually make it up the second team, but anytime the top team come in, I'm on in the bleachers. Plus, he would beat me in 3-2, 3-1, but they were like 31 to 3-1 matches because I do really well on the feet, and he wouldn't score me hardly ever. But when he got on top of me, oh, he would just brutalize me. I just wasn't man enough, and so it was really hard for me. And then I had to get my knee operated on. I blew my chest out. And it was just hard. I'm crying in my dorm room. And the assistant coach, who was the dorm parent, he didn't even knock. He just comes in, "What's the matter?" And I'm like, in a very manly way, "I want to go home, but I don't want to be a quitter." And he basically says, "Do what you need to do. You don't have to quit. Keep pursuing your dream." So the next year I redshirted. That year, Gary McBride from Cal Poly won the college division nationals. The next year I'm a redshirt. I'm 25 or 26-1. I lose to this guy, Bruce Biondi. Biondi beats up McBride in the college nationals. And then the next year in the semis, I beat McBride, went up a weight. I wrestled the Cal Poly guy who beat me up in the junior nationals my second year, and beat him, beat the defending champion Biondi in the semis, beat a guy named Stan Opp, who was on our world team and Pan Am team in the finals, and wound up winning the college nationals. So for those wrestlers that are listening and you're having a hard time and you're getting your hiney whooped and it's very discouraging for you, don't give up. Everybody goes through difficult times. Everybody loses sometime. And you've got to fight through those tough times for great things to happen. Ben Peterson, I don't know if he won a match his first year. Russ Helgson, I know, didn't win a match, and they went on to greatness, and that's true of so many, many people. You got to fight through tough times for great things to happen. And when you do that in the realm of sport, in the realm of wrestling, it carries over to all of life.
Yeah, that's a great point. How long after, first of all, how did it feel to win a national championship? Do you remember how you felt when that happened?
I remember every aspect of it. And when I won, I bent down to take my ankle off. I'm smiling from that wall to that wall. And the first person I see is the mat judge, who happened to be the former assistant coach and dorm parent at Cal Poly. And he's looking at me and I'm looking at him. We're both smiling. He knows I'm the college national championship. I know it, but we also know that 2 years before, I'm crying like a baby in my dorm. So it was ecstatic. My brother's wrestling in the Suffolk County Championship. He's not even seated. Has one of the toughest weight class ever. I call him. He's won. I've won. My dad gets on the phone. He's crying. And this is the thing about anything you pursue, young boys and girls that are listening. Uh, those are memories you'll have forever. If I never did anything else, that's a memory I'll have forever. So that's my story. I tell my story. I tell other people's stories. Be a story listener, be a storyteller, and it will propel you, it will motivate you to fight through those tough times and to accomplish great things.
What a great story that you guys made eye contact and all that right
Isn't
after
that
it happened.
amazing? Yeah.
Yeah.
And his son is was well, and I used to wrestle in the dorm. I don't know, he's probably 8 years old, and we'd have these matches, and of course I'd beat him. Sometimes I may let him beat me. He went on to be a great one at Cal Poly wrestling, national runner-up, Scotty Heaton, and probably would have been a national champion if he had been healthy. We've maintained a good friendship. I'm actually going out to speak to the Cal Poly wrestlers sometime this fall and work with the coaches as well. And they're doing a great job out there, and I'm excited about it.
So when you won the college national championship and then were runner-up in the D1s, was that the same season?
No, so I lost in the All-American round, but actually, under today's rules, I would have been an All-American my sophomore year.
Okay.
I would have been seventh or eighth, but the only top six were D1 All-Americans. The next year, I was national runner-up, lost by a point to Gary Brees from the University of Oklahoma. Interestingly enough, that was Oklahoma's last national championship, and had I not lost that match, they wouldn't have won the championship. So I reminded them of that in the interview. So then my senior, I was ranked number one, had beat the national champ by 9 points, that year's national champ, and had dominated most of the guys. But I blew my knee out in the Easterns and still had to win a match to qualify. I won to the finals and then forfeited, and then still qualified. I was still seeded first, and I got bronchitis and 2 ear infections. I think I could have won it. Now this is me talking on my knee, but I couldn't breathe, and it was just brutal. I wound up losing to Mike Land on the buzzer, and I was a guy who almost always was scoring at the end. And I can remember my coach telling me to move, and I'm just trying to hold on and breathe. So it was a very disappointing end, and you have that in sport. But the key thing is, were you faithful? Did you work hard? Did you work smart? And I worked as hard as I could have worked, to be honest with you, and so I have satisfaction in that. But it was still pretty heartbreaking.
I bet. Is Mike Land the guy that Randy Lewis had such good matches with? Is that a different?
Yeah, Mike Land beat him the first couple of times, beat him in the NCAA finals, and maybe the following year. And he was a great wrestler and a great guy.
Okay, so you were the same.
I really don't want a rematch.
Did you ever wrestle Randy Lewis?
No, I didn't. He was younger than I, and I think Mike beat him, and then later on Randy beat Mike. I think Nick Gallo may have beaten him. I'm not sure. And I beat Nick a couple of times, but never wrestled Randy. But I would do so with a little. I mean, I was confident in my abilities, but I also know his mad skills and Randy Danger Lewis. So you got to be alert that whole match, because any time out of anywhere, the lat throw, or the lateral drops, or whatever he needed, he could pull out of his hat. He truly was a great one. I'm sure you had him on, one of the all-time great storytellers as well.
Yeah. I would like to have him on again. I did an audio call with him. I'd like to have him on and actually talk, like see him, like I'm being able to see you. That would be cool. I mean, yeah, he's an all timer for sure.
Yeah,
Um, so when you got into coaching, first of all, you were at Cornell as a head coach. You were an assistant coach a couple other places before you
yeah,
got to
that was
Cornell.
later on. So when I graduated, I wanted to get a year of Bible college, and I wound up helping coach the Bible college team. I was the assistant, but I ran the practices and whatever little recruiting we did, very fundamentalist Bible college, I would do. And then I had no plans on coaching. And I did that to get some money to help me with school. And then I did ministry for a year. I was in business. And then in business, I just didn't like what I was doing. And one day I pulled off the side of the road and said, I'm not going to do this anymore. But I had a wife and either three and a half or no, by that time, four kids. And I had to do something, obviously. My wife didn't work. And I took a job at the University of Pittsburgh making $11,800. And I worked my fanny off. I did clinics, banquets, substitute taught if I had to. But we had their first winning season in 5 years. I was the head assistant behind Randy Stottlemyre. And we had a killer recruiting class. I brought in a JUCO runner-up who was a great wrestler. He wound up transferring. Uh, but then two guys that won Eastern Championships and a guy who wound up being a four-time All-American, three-time finalist, two-time national champion by the name of Pat Santoro. And
Oh,
all of those guys were signed for less than one scholarship because we had very, very little money. And I never got to coach them because I walked in the office one day in the spring and Randy said to me, got some bad news. Well, good news for you, bad news for me. I said, what? He said, West Point wants you. I said, well, I'm not going. He said, yeah, when you talk to him, you might, because we had to live with our in-laws. We didn't have any money, and they were offering considerably more than, it still wasn't much money, but considerably more than double that. And I had to do it, but I didn't want to leave. But then I wound up falling in love with West Point. And should I talk about that, or have you got some other questions?
you can keep talking about that. Sure. I was just curious how you got into coaching, and then obviously we're going to get to Cornell and OU especially.
Yeah. So anyway, fell in love with our guys, and Ed Steers was the head coach, just a great man, and I kind of took over most of the recruiting. Ed was always involved and was a great recruiter, but our recruiting classes were 13th, 7th, and 10th at West Point, and we won their only Eastern Championship in history, and were 13th in the NCAAs, and which was unheard of. They honored our team some years ago, and I loved it. But then Cornell called, and Andy Noel, who was a great coach at Cornell, he had told me several years he might have development in the future, and I'm the guy he'd want to coach the team. And finally called me and said, "Could you come this year?" And I said, "No way." And he said, "How about next year?" I said, "Well, we'd have to have a talk about what commitment is and what I want to do and what they want to do." And so I didn't worry about it all. I said, also, I need to tell the head coach if there's a real offer, but I'm not thinking about it. It's a year away and I'm not going anyway. Well, then they bring me down to Goldman Sachs. The chairman of Goldman Sachs says, I'll give $50,000 a year to the program. Another guy says, I know you want to get in the house. We had no money whatsoever. He said, I'll lend you any amount of money, interest free. Another guy said, I'll give $10,000 a year to the program. And you have to raise all your money for the program at Cornell. So I can see this can be done. I know it's a great program. And so now I've got to tell the guys at West Point, and I'll never, one of the hardest things I've ever done, I'm sitting on the bleachers like this, and Coach Steers says, Coach Spates has something to tell you. I lift my head, I put it down. I lift my head, I put it down. And one of our great, great guys who now is out here in Norman says he's leaving. But I didn't want to leave, but I had to leave. And then, of course, Cornell was glorious and a great chapter in my life and career.
Yeah, I bet. Who are some of your best guys at Cornell?
Oh, well, well, first of all, uh, my first year we had an All American, a guy from Iowa who was a very talented kid, but he was all over the map. I mean, he would do all sorts of things, just a neat, unique, quirky guy. One day we're in the spring and we're walking down and we see he's playing in a band, on the grounds, and we didn't even know he played. And he's a drummer, and he was the kind of guy you could show him a move and he could do it immediately, but by the next day he forgot about it because he never really focused on wrestling. But when there was a match and they blew that whistle, he was a lion. He actually beat Chuck Barbie. He wound up beating Steiner, either for third or fourth, or to get in for third and fourth. And just a tough kid. Pat Waters was his name. But the guy we recruited that changed everything was a guy named Mark Ferguson, wrestler of the year in Oklahoma, being recruited by Penn State, North Carolina, Nebraska, Oklahoma, has a number of full rides. And everybody's telling me, why are you recruiting him? You're not going to get him. We're like 90th in the country, 100th in the country, 9th in the East. And they're telling him, you can't go to Cornell. They stink. And we didn't stink, but by that standard. And I would tell people, I'd say, how are you? You any good? I said, no, we stink, but we're going to be great. I recruited Robbie Cole. He didn't come for a semester, but he said, Coach, are we any good? I said, oh, no, we stink, but we're going to be great. And that was our mantra to Mark. And great in the classroom, great in life, and great on the mat. And he bought into that dream. And I'll never forget the night he committed. I told him a story about stealing home. I won't get into it now, but it's a story of a guy who wouldn't settle for third. And you have all these people telling him that he'll never do it here, we'll never do it here. And he calls me up 11 o'clock at night, 10 our time. And he says, Coach, I've called to tell you I've made my decision and I've decided to steal home. My whole family, I got little kids. They're all up waiting for this call. I dropped to my knees. I'm pumping the phone. They leap off the couch. They're laughing. They're screaming. They're slapping their hands, clapping. I said, Mark, listen, your first standing ovation as a Cornellian. And two-time Eastern champ. He was two-time All-American, beat Colat one out of one. He's in Colat's film, by the way, and they're friends now as well. He was 2-1 against TJ Jaworski. He could have been a national champion. Frankly, I have no clue as to what tapering was at the time. More was always better. And the other thing is, he worked so hard academically, he felt maybe he didn't work hard enough. He worked as hard as anybody. But still, what he did was astonishing. Student of the Year in the School of Human Ecology, Student Athlete of the Year at Cornell. He's been a doctor for many years, Associate Director of Medicine for Oklahoma, and just a big-time winner and a really good friend. So those are some of the guys. David Hirsch went on to be a two-time All-American and national champion. We had guys that weren't Ben Morgan. We just had a bundle of guys, but some of the greatest memories of guys who never accomplished their dreams. Mark McFarland ranked first in the East 2 years in a row, and first year he breaks his hand. Second year he comes to me and said, Coach, I'm going to give up my spot. I said, why? He said, because my shoulder's so bad, I'm afraid it'll cost us the championship. And I told him, Mark, that's going to be after your decision because we're not pulling you. Both years he steps out. We have a guy who cuts 100 pounds to step into that weight and wins 2 Eastern championships, propels us to our first Eastern championship. We won the last 2 at 8, might have been 9, but I think it was 8 of the 20 Eastern championships, and we're wound up going from about 100th to 20th to 15th to 10th in the NCAAs. And they didn't duplicate that success for 10 years. And then 3 things happened. One, they totally changed admissions. Two, they totally changed financial aid. And then the third thing is Robbie Cole, who had wanted to leave there and go somewhere else, decided I'm not getting a job anywhere. I'm going to do it here. And he became maybe the greatest coach in the country. He hasn't had quite the advantages of, of a Cal or of a David Taylor. And not to minimize those guys, they are absolutely unbelievable. But Robbie, for where he's in, what he's done, is a master.
I was going to ask you about Rob Cole, and then I thought, no, he wrestled for North Carolina. So
Yes.
did he? Okay. So, but he did wrestle for Cornell for a while?
No. He came as an assistant coach.
Oh,
So
okay.
I called his house. I didn't get him, but I got his wife, and I basically recruited her. So if he's coming, that's fine. But she's going anywhere. And when he comes home, she says, "Hey, we're going to Cornell." He says, "What are you talking about?" They offers us an assistant coaching job, and he didn't have two nickels to rub together. And he said, "Are we any good?" And once again, nope, we stink, but we're going to be great. And that's not fair to Andy Noel because they had a very good Ivy League team. But of course, and he wanted us to go higher, and that was our goal. So he couldn't come till January, and it was so great because when I got there, we didn't have another assistant. We had a great guy who had come from high school, Carmen Molina, a wonderful guy, but we didn't have another assistant. I have to move my family. I have to coach. My first day there was our first day of practice. I have to recruit a staff. I have to do the recruiting and run a couple of tournaments. And it was crazy time. When Rob came, I had someone to lean on and pour, frustrations out to, so you don't pour them out to the team, because there were kids, Tim, that it was hard for them because they weren't recruited to be great at that level, and they had no aspirations. It wasn't their fault. It wasn't my fault, but that's where we were going. And then, of course, from then on, we recruited guys, and of course, Pat Waters did amazing. A guy named Jack Macko was wonderful. And we had a lot of great guys. I don't want to slight any of them, but Ben Morgan, I think it was the year we took third before winning the last two. Might have won it that year. I'm not sure. Everything kind of rolls together, but he's at 177, and Ben was a free spirit. His hair was streaked different colors and had kind of a little mohawk in the back and shaved on the sides. And he's talking about winning it. I said, "I'll tell you what, Ben, you win it, you guys can do my hair." Right? Well, in the semis, he's maybe tied with a great Navy guy, and he's got a leg in, but the guy has his arm across his body. So there's no way, he's hanging off on the side. There's no way he can get up on top. But he does. I've never seen anything like it. He starts arching and comes up on top, wins the match. Now he's so loose in the finals. They announce him. He's loosening up, and he's looking over at me. Vum vum, vum vum. Right? He wins the match. They raise his hand. Vum vum. Right? I was smart enough to tell him not till after nationals, because I don't want to go to nationals looking like an idiot, right? Because I don't know how old I was, late 30s, right? And I forgot I had banquets. So now I show up at these banquets to speak, and I look like a middle-aged guy who's trying to look young and cool, of which I was neither. But we had to wait for a good intro. So a lot of great memories at Cornell.
Yeah, I bet. And then Rob Cole goes on to be the head coach and coaches Kyle Dake, who, for my money is one of the all-time greats. If, he's in the conversation as one of the best ever, for sure. I mean, the things that Kyle Dake has done is just amazes me and continues to do. And I hope he gets that Olympic gold medal.
At every weight, I mean, Schneider better watch out. You never know where he's going to show up.
Yeah.
But his dad was a club coach for me. And I remember one day he came up to the room after practice, and Robbie and I are there, and he says, "Just had a boy." I said, "He's going to be a Cornell wrestler." I never predicted he'd be a four-timer at four different weights. So love that family. And so proud of Kyle Dake.
Yeah, I mean, he's literally won national titles at 140 all the way up to 190. And
Yes.
I would love to see a list of the guys he has beaten in America at all those weight classes, because it would be, I mean, there are so many guys. I mean, the guy beat Jaden Cox at when he weighed 185 pounds. He took a match from him at the trials, and you know, I don't know
Dave,
what. Sorry, go
David
ahead.
is David Taylor, one of the greatest ever, and one of the most creative ever. And Kyle Dake has won at 41, 49, and 57. My son Jeremy is an assistant coach there and his personal workout partner. And Kyle goes to Jeremy, I'm going to move up. And Jeremy's like, well, you better tell Rob, right? And he goes up a weight to take on one of the greatest ever. And that's what makes greatness. You cannot shy away from the challenge. This is why I just texted Ben Askren the other day to congratulate him on his RAF. Well, you say, but he didn't win. No, he did win. He won big because he was an inspiration to all wrestlers everywhere. The guy has no lungs. After 2 periods, he had no legs. He didn't have the training he needed to do it. And yet, hey, I'll take on the challenge. So he was masterful. He is masterful, and one of the great stories in American wrestling.
Oh yeah, and the fact that he, he probably could have stalled that out and won that match, and he kept shooting because that's who he is, and that was more amazing to me than anything. I'm like, man, stall.
Yep.
But he wouldn't do it. And going back to Kyle Dake, I remember sitting on my couch and thinking like he's moved up a weight every year, and David Taylor's going to be the guy at 65 next year. I was like, they're going to end up wrestling. I remember being on my couch and getting so excited about it. Um, and before anybody had announced anything, I just remember like I'm kind of a nerd about that stuff, so I remember thinking like, oh, that's going to happen, and sure enough, it did. And anyway, let's move on to Oklahoma, where you were at the longest and coached some amazing. I wrote them down yesterday. I know there's more guys than this, but Michael Leitner, Tion Ware, John Kading, Sam Hazewinkle, Robbie Waller, Byron Tucker, Leon Crump. Is that how you say his name?
Yep,
Uh,
Leon. Yes.
okay. And then Jared Frere. So he coached 2 Olympians and several NCAA champions. Um,
Three world,
I
three world team members as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I messaged Tion Ware the other day because I'd really like to talk to him.
Yeah.
What are your memories of that guy?
Oh, well, first of all, we're recruiting Tion, and we go to see him play football. Now, Tion, probably 5'5" at the max, okay? And he's a running back, large school, real tough, Edmond North, real tough football. And you would think he'd be scooting in and out on the sides. He's running up the middle, and he's like a pinball. Boom, 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 boom. And he averaged over 200 yards. And a lot of times they'd pull him out at the half. If he was a few inches taller, you wouldn't know his name wrestling. Well, you would, because he still would be great in wrestling, but he'd be playing on Sundays now. And what a great, great competitor. His freshman year, we pull him out of red shirt in January. And in the NCAA championships, he wins in overtime. Was that the year he won in overtime in the semis? Well, the bottom line in the finals, wrestling a great kid, Dylan Long from Iowa State. And on the buzzer, he takes him down to win, and he does 2 backflips. Well, then they come back and they take it away. And you watch it. Time was not out, and it was a takedown. And now he's already done 2 backflips. So what's his emotional state going to be? So they take it back. They come in the center, and Dylan Long hits a single, and Tion sprawls. Unfortunately, he hit a big sweep single. So Tion sprawls straight out. The guy's 3/4 of the way behind him, and the whole crowd goes, oh! And I almost have a heart attack. And Tion leaps up, turns around, does a snake, winds up taking him down, does 3 more backflips. A 5 backflip match. The
Wow.
next year, he breaks his neck, does therapy, and then sprains a high ankle sprain late in the All Star meet, which I think was the beginning of February, and he still can win it. But frankly, he doesn't have the confidence he needs. He just doesn't feel that he's quite ready, and loses in the semis. He has a snake, but locks his hands on it, and that's illegal, and loses and takes fifth. Wins it again the next year against a great, uh, is it Nate Gallick, I believe, and then loses a squeaker to him the next year. So two-time NCAA champion, three-time finalist, I believe, would have been a fourth if he didn't get so injured, and winds up making a world team. And when he was here as a coach, the kids loved him, absolutely loved him. He's got a couple of transfers out there. Other guys have wanted to go out there, and uh, and the bottom line, he's going to do a great job out there. Yeah, great,
Yeah.
great athlete, great competitor, great athlete. One of the best I've ever coached. If you have his leg up on your shoulder, Tion could take a nap. Tion, you know, he was just amazing.
That first NCAA title he won, was that in St. Louis? Do you remember?
I would say yes, but to be honest with you, I don't have a clue.
I'm almost positive it was, because I think I was working in St. Louis and I was like, "Holy crap, the NCAA finals are on right now." So I took a cab to the NCAA finals. I'm almost positive it was in St. Louis, and
Wow.
I I remember watching that, and he was like 18 years old at the time. And back then, I mean, it's rare now for a true freshman to win an NCAA title, but back then there couldn't have been more than a handful of guys that had done that.
No, and that's true. And I'm not sure if it was that year I talked about the semis match. He loses the coin toss. No, he wins the coin toss, which means he gets his choice and he chooses bottom. If he gets out, he wins. If he doesn't, he loses. And he has a great legger from an Army wrestler who was just a killer, wound up being a runner-up after that time. But here's the deal. I said to him afterwards, I said, T, how'd you feel when you won the coin toss? He said, well, coach, I felt pretty good. He said, I should be able to get away on anyone. I said, that's good. I said, how would you feel if you lost it? He said, well, coach, I think I'd have felt pretty good. I should be able to ride anybody for 30 seconds. And that's the confidence that he had. And we had another guy in the semis, and he lost the coin toss and still got a victory and wound up winning. So two guys that won it that year, both in amazing ways.
What do you think is the hardest thing about being a coach?
About a college coach?
Yes, sir.
Well, I mean, it's relentless. It's relentless. I mean, you have to go and go and go and go. It is just, and one of the things I mentor 9 to 10 college coaches a year, and I tell them you have to make your team part of your family and your family part of your team. Otherwise, it's a mistress. And so our guys, we have a picture when I'm at Cornell, and Nick Malden, who's another amazing story, now owns Eastside Chick-fil-A, lowest guy ever to get into West Point that we recruited. And he got in the prep school and they told him he'd never get in West Point, but he did. And he wins the Eastern Championship. I'm an opposing coach at Cornell. And we have a picture of my wife and I and two of our kids hugging him. And the other two kids are like this, just eager to get to him so they can get their hands on him and hug him. And the bottom line is, and I'm not even sure how I got that story, but you got to love your team and you got to make them part of your family. And then your family, their family, they love your team too. And all my kids were so excited about our guys. And that's really key. But, it's relentless recruiting. You're at a stage where, It's tough for kids. It's a new freedom now in college, and some of them abuse that. Some of them may not have an academic bent. They come to wrestle, but you've got to motivate them in that realm and get them to see it's a long life. I mean, think of the tragedy. You're the best in the nation. You're an NCAA champion, and now you hate what you're doing for the rest of your life. And so the greatest things, we talked a lot about academics. We would set a 3.0 as a benchmark. We'd ask kids, what are you going to get? Coach, I'm going to get a 4.0. What are you going to get? I'm going to get a 3.5. What are you going to get? I'm going to get a 2.5. What are you going to get? I'm going to get a 2.375. Well, how are you going to do that? What do you have to have? And they wouldn't have a clue. But eventually they'd come up, Coach, I'm going to get a 3.0. Whoa! And you'd see kids, and the things that I was proudest of, we'd have parents tell us, we sent you a boy, you sent us back a man. And then sometimes it didn't happen. And sometimes kids don't get it and they mess up and they make the wrong decisions. It's neat to see many of those kids figure it out in life. I had a kid one time we had to let go. And years later, one of my former wrestlers comes. I said, what are you doing? He says, I'm in for a wedding, giving him a hug. And he says, I'm here with Mark. And I said, well, where's Mark? Oh, he's over there. He's afraid to come over. And I said, come with me. And the closer we get to him, the more I'm scowling. And I put my hand out. He takes it. I pull him to me, give him a big hug, and tell him, Mark, don't even think about that. That's ancient history. And we're all, present company included, young and stupid. And now I had him over for lunch. And now we're good friends. I'm delighted to see him at Nationals. Very proud of him. Went on to win a JUCO national championship when he transferred. So it's about building those relationships. My biggest failures are the ones I failed to. And some of them, I carry the responsibility for that, in the sense that a lot of times I would tell them over and over, but there's a thing with the Leadership Academy. It's called the GROW model. And basically it's a question asking technique that you lead people into the answers. Some of the problems is, as coaches, we have all the answers. We've seen all the situations, but you can't tell people sometimes. You got to lead them into it. And I didn't know that, didn't do a good job of that. Sometimes I'm very passionate. My temper would take over in response to things. There were times, we had a couple of bad years, my only bad years, where I have that line that's drawn, but I'm moving it because I'm trying to help kids. That's not the way you help them. You wind up enabling them. So a lot of great memories, a lot of great successes, some failures in there as well. But the bottom line is you continue growing as a coach, you continue growing as a wrestler. And there are guys that didn't realize everything they wanted to, but have gone on to be great men, big time husbands and fathers, and great successes. And that just thrills me to death.
Did you ever, did you don't have to mention names, but were there ever anybody that just had everything on a wrestling mat and were so good but couldn't figure it out, like the academics or any of that, and never, did you have a few of those guys?
Absolutely, we did. Never really academics. And this is interesting because before they changed the rules, we had to be a certain level of academician to get in. And I didn't like that. I thought, because what you're doing is making students out of students. You see, we brought in kids who had very little academic interest, and I can tell you, people say, well, what was your graduate rate? Well, oh, you're on. I didn't even know it, nor did I care. Because I knew this. If they stayed with wrestling, they were going to graduate. Because we were going to motivate them, encourage them, help them. I've had kids that I've had studying in the academic lab. They've been in my office. They've been in my home. And so if they stayed with us, they were going to continue. But we had kids that were so very talented. I'm thinking of a couple right now. And they just, too much freedom. And they just didn't figure out that you have to make certain choices in life. And we would always tell them this, 3 things. And this is before I came back to Christ, because I turned my heart for many years. But student, citizen, athlete, and that's what we would sell. You can student, citizen, and athlete. Yeah, and part of being a citizen is you still have a social life. You can major in two of them. You can't major in social life. You can't uh, and wrestling and give up your academics. Okay, you have to be a citizen and you have to be an athlete, and be a student citizen is what I should say. Then the second is social life. I haven't given my recruiting pitch in a while. So you have to be a student and a citizen. You have to be a wrestler, but social life, you have to minor. You have to minor. If you major in any two of them, but it's not, you're not taking care of your social life, you're not going to realize all your goals. And that was true of several young men. And it's hard, but they've gone on to do well in life. And they call the neatest thing in the world is kids with whom you didn't have a good relationship when they call and they get it, and you're so proud of them. And we've all been there in some way at one time or another. So I kind of messed that up. That's the gist of it. You can't major in your social life and either academics or wrestling. Something's got to give. Okay, so let that be your social life. You're going to have enough fun, but this is fun. And having a great career and future and great family is fun too.
Yeah. And sometimes when you're young, you can just be so short-sighted about things, unfortunately. I mean, I wrestled in JUCO for 2 years, and we had some guys. I mean, the level of talent in JUCO, a lot of people don't realize uh, how many great wrestlers, just pure wrestlers, are in JUCO. And we had some guys after they would be gone after a semester, but
Yeah.
for that semester, I was like, I've never seen anyone like this dude. Like there was a guy who Benji Doucette, whose son Connor wrestled this year at he got fifth this year, no fourth at heavyweight. His dad Benji was on my college team, and I was undefeated my senior year, and I could not score a point on that guy. Um, I just felt like a child wrestling him. It was like embarrassing. I was like, I can't believe this guy's my age. Like he just feels like his hips are like, but he's not even the best example because he went on and wrestled at Missouri Valley, but there were other guys that um, you just never see, or you come back from Christmas break, it's like, what happened to that guy? I had the best wrestler I've ever seen, and he'd be gone for whatever reason. He didn't like school or whatever, and the sport is littered with stories like that, and they're usually good ones. There's some guys that were on my team that I would love to know what they're doing now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
Great dudes and great athletes and wrestlers, and but they just, I don't know, for whatever reason didn't go on to do that.
Can I touch quickly on Connor Doucette?
Sure.
Because David Taylor comes in, brings a wealth of talent, brings in, Hendrickson, who's a monster and has done he's just grown incredibly as a wrestler and even as a person. And I'm thinking, why is Connor Doucette staying there? He's not going to see the light of day. And that kid not only stayed, he was willing to sacrifice behind Wyatt Hendrickson, but he kept working and he made huge improvement and is an All-American for the rest of his life. So kudos to Connor Doucette.
Yeah, and I had him on the podcast. He's I had him on a few weeks ago, and I really enjoyed it. It was cool to see, because that's how Benji could have been a Division I All-American. I have every, he had great matches with Michael Leitner in high school, I believe.
Really, I met him at Michael Leitner's house. Actually, his parents. His parents' house. Yep.
Recently, you did?
It was maybe 2 years ago, and I was thinking that David Taylor was coming in, and that's what I was thinking. You better find a different home, and don't let other people tell you what you can and cannot do. And that was always my mantra. When at Oklahoma, when I got here, a great tradition. Coach Abel was a great coach, but they were really down when I came here. And people said, well, You shouldn't go there. You shouldn't. Don't let other people tell you what you can and cannot do. And we're going to be great. We want you to be part of it. So,
Can you point to one team that you think was your absolute best team?
well, like I said, they all roll together, but we had a year in which Leonce was hurt, and we had some real challenges with injuries. I'll tell you some of the guys. Uh, Leonce Crump was hurt, and Leonce Crump was ineligible when you as a really bright guy, but he made some bad choices, and we would have had a shot at winning it that year. Uh, we had David Kelgard, one of the all-time greats, lost in the last 10 seconds to a senior number one guy in the country as a freshman, and then blew his knee. Wes Roberts, Matt Grice, Mark Worthy, Tom Minogue, and I shudder because I'm going to forget some guys, but we had teams, we had two teams that we were in second to the last bout of that night. And when Mako got upset, we slid to third, two-time defending champion. And then one year, Josh Lambrecht, Josh, if he sees this, we love you so much, Josh, and we don't care that you lost other than for you because you were the greatest. But he was winning 14-2 in the finals. And when he lost, was still in second. And if Cale Sanderson, and he lost on a great move, but if Cale Sanderson would have lost his last match, we would have taken second that year. And I told Cale that recently, and he wasn't aware of it, and it was kind of funny. I don't think he would have changed his strategy so that we could win, but
What kind of guy is Cale Sanderson? He seems like a super good dude.
oh, Cal Sanderson is the best. He's the epitome because everything he is on the mat, he is off the mat. He's a great family man. He loves his team. He loves his kids, and I could not have more respect for him. And he's changed the course of wrestling. When you look at people that have changed the course of wrestling, you got to see John Smith with his low single, Gene Mills with his tilts, was Jordan Burroughs with maybe I would say the most lethal shot in wrestling, that head in the middle double, across the board, internationally, and nationally. Cal Sanderson, many things, his heel picks and stuff, but play wrestling. This bent on creativity where you're going to let guys in, and then rather than do the things you've heard about or the things you're just going to play in different situations and get a feel for new things. They have done more for creativity in the realm of wrestling, I think, than any other person or any other group. And now what they're doing in wrestling, I had a great deal of confidence in my wrestling, and we had great wrestlers back then. And some of them get really mad when I say the best high school wrestler of today would beat Dan Gable when he was a senior in college. They would beat Danny Hodge when he was a never been beaten, never taken down guy. Everything has changed. And for those who disagree, just look at all the measurable sports. Go back and look in gymnastics at Olga Korbut and Nadia Comaneci, who were the first tens, and now young women and young men are doing on the beam what they were doing on the mat. Everything has changed. We are in the glory days of wrestling, and what people are doing is unbelievable. And a lot of that stems out of that play wrestling. We're going to try different situations and see what we come up with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Especially, I was reading the other day about a guy who just broke the mile record. He said it was like 3 minutes and 42 seconds. And there was a time people thought breaking a 4 minute mile was unheard of. And now someone's doing it by 18 seconds. I mean, that shit, I was like, how does a human being for a mile
First
run that?
4 minute miler.
What's that?
Who was the first 4 minute miler?
Roger Bannister.
There we go, my friend. Ding, ding, ding. Very good.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, you've had some great guys. And you might not want to even answer this, but who do you think is the best guy you ever coached?
Wow. The best guy I ever coached. I would say, I would say probably T. You know, Michael Leitner was a monster. Byron Tucker, at a given point in time, he was a kid. This is a pretty neat thing. He never All American, a one time Virginia State champion, never All American, lost 2 times in the All American round, and he would always lose from here up. And between, that's from the neck up if you're listening on radio. Uh, if between his junior and senior year, he analyzed every time doubt and fear came into his mind, he analyzed all the negative self talk that would come in. He developed the positive self talk to develop every negative word that came in. And his senior year, he walked through the NCAA championships, beat a great Josh Koscheck in the finals, went on to win the World University Games, had Joe Williams beat, and then tried at the end to gut wrench him when he was winning and wound up losing him. But at a given point in time, he may have been the best. Best athletes, Kendrick Maple, Tion Ware, and Michael Leitner. Just incredible athletes. Byron Tucker, not a good athlete, but a great, great wrestler. And a guy who developed just as much academically from a good student to has to get in dental school provisionally. No, has to get in graduate school provisionally. Then gets in full time, then gets in dental school, then gets, when he graduates, a postdoctoral scholarship to Michigan, then a postdoctoral scholarship to Harvard, and he's owned his own practice. Now he's just a dentist because he enjoys that more, but doing amazing things.
Yeah, I think you're right too about the progression of the sport. I mean, it's easy for, I'm 50 now, so it's easy for me to look back and think like, could Spencer Lee have beaten a guy like Terry Brands? And it's hard for me to picture. It's hard for me to picture like Terry Brands. That might not be the best example, but Terry Brands losing, or Sammy Henson, or any of those guys losing to somebody like Spencer Lee. What do you think would happen in that scenario? Do you think Sammy Henson could still beat Spencer Lee back then? Like,
well, certainly anything I say would not be to depreciate Sammy's wrestling, because one, he's one of the most powerful guys to walk the face of the earth, and one of the most determined. Absolutely screwed in the Olympic final. Should have been an Olympic medalist as well. But my money would be on Spencer Lee. I think Spencer Lee was equally as powerful. And I think he had more offense. And when he got on top, he may be the greatest top wrestler that's ever walked the planet. I mean, he would just torture people on top. Now, I'm trying to think how much older, but I would go with today's wrestlers, just because they put it this way. Now, we're talking about not if Sammy Henson were alive today, or he is alive, we're wrestling today, because he would grow and learn with it. But if we're talking time transport, that you take Sammy Henson, then there's no question. And I'm not going to say that Sammy would agree, but why is that? There are so many more moves today that Sammy wouldn't even know. This pass by shrug, he wouldn't even know it's coming. Some of those tilts, he wouldn't know they're coming. Everything has changed in so many ways. Gray Simons, look him up, ancient history. He was a 6-timer. He won 3 NAIAs, 3 Division I's, 2-time Olympian. Gray Simons' freshman year, he's not eligible. He worked out with Andy Fitch, who won the NCAAs, and he tortured him. Andy Fitch had never seen a Granby roll. This was before it was popular. Gray comes in from Granby, and Granby rolls him to his back 100 times. The funk, all this stuff. People didn't know a lot of these things. I think that was around then. But there are so many, my time gets mixed up, but so many more moves every day that they're coming up with. So there's no question in my mind that Spencer Lee would prevail. But if I were betting against Brands and Sammy Henson, my heart would still be in my throat. It's just
Yeah.
they didn't know so many of the things that are prevalent today. They would be hit by surprise.
Yeah. Well, the only thing that could possibly get them over the hump with somebody like Spencer, I think, is he did have a tendency to run out of gas sometimes, and Terry Brands isn't going to run out of gas.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let me just say this, and certainly that's a point, but and part of Spencer Lee's running out of gas, I would have to think, is the number of times he's been hurt. Being on the all hospital team, he it's really amazing what that guy has accomplished. Even now, making another world team and beating the guy he beat in Lilydale. But that could happen. I mean, in a given match like that, but who's the better guy who's going to prevail most of the time? When you don't know all these moves, go back even further and you see wrestlers in their stances stand with their hands palm up and these horrible, horrible stances. I've seen Stan Abel was a great, great wrestler, two-time, and he got better as he coached too. Okay, but in the finals, I saw him one time wrestling uh, uh, Les Anderson, another national champion from Iowa State. And Anderson has a collar tie, and Stan shoots three single legs without trying to get rid of the collar tie. Well, we know today you can't do that. So, technique, positioning, just the stances today are better. And I just think take any measurable sport, go to track, go to gymnastics, go to swimming. Junior high kids are beating Olympic records of yesterday. So I think all the facts and statistics are in my favor. The thing that isn't is how does a guy like Terry Brands lose? How does a guy like Sammy Henson lose? You can't slight him in any way, but they didn't know so much of what's known today. They never saw things that were known today, and they would be hit by a surprise and then ridden in a way that maybe they've never seen before, you know.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Spencer Lee, that guy must
Hey,
be just.
hold on. Let's keep that our little secret and not let Sammy and Terry know that.
Yeah, you don't want either one of those guys coming after you, even now. I met Sammy a few times. He drove a couple hours to come to one of my shows a couple years ago just because he said he would. But I met him for the first time at the airport, and when I shook hands with him, I was like, man, this guy is just made out of rocks. And he's in his mid 50s now and still.
A big,
Um,
yep.
oh, man.
Uh,
And going back to Spencer Lee, sorry, go
Bo,
ahead.
let me tell you a Bo Mena story, Tim.
Okay.
Sammy, one time, he was a club coach for me as well, and then later an assistant, but he's got his shirt off and he's got this abrasion all around his waist. I'm like, Sammy, did you fall off your motorcycle? No, a Bo Manus gut wrench. So I thought
Wow.
you would, but I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, that's okay. I like to hear that. I didn't realize Bo was that strong. I knew he was super
Oh,
slick, but
yeah.
I didn't realize how strong he was.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say about Spencer Lee, he must be stronger than an elephant because when he was, especially in college, when he would turn those guys, I'm like, these are Division 1 studs, and he's making it look like a kids tournament out there. The way he was able to turn people, just I've
Yeah.
never seen anything like it. It didn't look fair.
I think apart from injury, he would be in the running for one of the greatest ever, if not the greatest ever. That's how good. I mean, when you think of how little training he did for a while and still went on to make Olympic teams and world teams, and you just have to give him incredible credit, and also to embrace the challenge again after all those disappointments and all those injuries. That's the heart of a champion.
Yeah, for sure. I'm really going to be rooting for him when the Worlds come, and I hope he can get that Olympic championship and all that because, yeah, he's really good for the sport. What was I going to ask you? I asked you what the hardest part about coaching was. What do you think the best part is?
The relationships, the relationships. We, Bo in the hospital, and or he wasn't in the hospital at this time, but he's getting ready for chemo, which he's responding to well at this time. Keep the prayers coming, and teammates are calling me from all over. What's going on? Tell us. And then guys fly in, drive in, and they're at my house spending the night here, and then Bo's coming over with his wife, and we're fellowshipping together 2 days at different times. He's got to go back and rest. And one night we're at his place, and it's the camaraderie, it's the calls. Shane Valdez, not knowing this, and before it happened, calls me up, 3-time All-American for us, and we just have a great talk and some great memories. And he's written a book that I'm going to publicize when it comes out, and then calls me again when he hears about Bo and he sees it. It was before I got to call him. And it's those relationships that mean everything.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I missed the most about wrestling was the bus ride home, and especially because we had a good team my senior year of high school, especially, and the ride home, the ride to the restaurant, because we were all going to go eat at Sirloin Stockade or whatever it was back then, Golden Corral, I think, actually. Yeah, my buddies, to this day, when you see him, like, no time has passed, and nothing bonds you like suffering, in the way that wrestlers have to suffer. I miss that stuff about it. I wanted to switch gears a little bit and talk about your faith. You said that you stepped away from it for a while. What was that about?
That was about sin, and that was about ugliness. So what happened was, I first heard the gospel when I was in college, and Steve Gaydash, who I'd met many time Alabama state championship coach, is a Long Islander, and we meet at the New York AC tournament. I'm redshirting at home at Christmas in Long Island. He calls me up. You want to drive down to Maryland and compete in an open tournament? I said, sure. We stay with a young married couple. They start talking about Jesus, and I'm like, let me out of here. Why is this, right? Jesus freaks, but they're not the nice Jesus freaks. I'm not shy. I begin debating them, but all my debaters, I think, I feel, I've been told, and they're opening the Bible and saying, but Jesus says, God's word says, the Bible says. And so finally, I'm like shocked because, one, I'm 20 years old. I went to Catholic school for 9 years, had never read the Bible. Secondly, I'm a Christian, right? I'm not Buddhist. I'm not Jewish. But these are Christians who actually love Jesus. And I'm not implying that no Catholics do love Jesus. Many don't, and that's true in Protestantism as well. But I couldn't think of anybody I knew that loved Jesus like that, or that would want to talk to me about Jesus. And so I looked up these girls who, one time I knock on a door at Slippery Rock, and a voice said, some cute girls, and a voice says, come in. And I go in, and there's all these people sitting around with Bibles. They said, come on in. I'm like, that's okay. Well, why is that? If I love God and I love Jesus and I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to ask about it, I don't want to study it, I don't want to sing God's praises, but eventually now he's got my attention, and I begin going to Bible studies. I critically examine God's word and wind up coming to faith. But I wasn't grounded and rooted. I was directed to a very fundamentalistic group right away, where a lot of learning the Bible is all about knowing the right thing as opposed to living it out by faith. I didn't understand sin. I used to think God didn't want us to sin. He didn't want us screwing around and having fun. And we should obey God, just because he's God, but he also explains to us that sin is not your friend. Sin only and always brings ruin, brokenness, and bondage, and so I'm trying to tough it out as opposed to, trust God and believe God. I come up with some challenging circumstances. I grew up extremely sexually promiscuous, and in the tough times, I started going down that path. And what sin does, Tim, is it caresses and then it grabs on, and it will drag you places you never thought you'd go and keep you there for far longer. And I wanted to be free, even as a married man, and found myself in terrible bondage, hurting not only myself, not only my career, even for as well as we did, but a good woman and wonderful children, and to my eternal shame. Now, I'm not shy about sharing this story, and I've had people say, "So do you live your life with guilt and shame?" And my answer to that is no. Christ has borne my guilt. Christ has borne my shame. But I do live it with regret. How I wish I had never gone down that path. I marvel at Hollywood stars that say they wouldn't change anything. And I'm thinking, do you have a memory? Do you have a conscience? But what an unbelievable the gospel is. What an unbelievable thing. No matter who you are or what you've done, you can have the forgiveness of sins. And you can have the assurance of life eternal in a world that isn't broken and where we ourselves will not be broken as well. And so God has taken something so ugly and horrible. He's forgiven it. Not only that, he uses it in my life to be able to warn other men, don't go down that path. This is what you think you're going to get, but this is what actually takes place. So I am so grateful for the ability to be used. I teach 3 Bible studies a week. I do 4 during the year with the OU wrestling team. I teach one called Wrestling with the Word, and it's a group of men from 14 different states, and they pray for one another, encourage one another. But the goal is to be strengthened in the faith, to be men of the Word, to live it out, and to realize the joy and peace and hope. When I turned away, I thought the Christian life doesn't work. And I will tell you, it doesn't work unless by grace through faith you live it. I don't care how faithful you are as a believer. If you invite sin in your life, you're inviting brokenness in your life, and then you go, God, I can't believe you did this. Well, it wasn't God, because he's telling us in his word and in Christian counsel and in the preaching, don't go down that path. That's not the path of life. I had to learn it the hard way. Others had to learn it the hard way through me, but God is so gracious. His mercy is unbelievable. If you asked me if I was happy back then, I would tell you yes. I've always been a cup half full guy, and I didn't have a lot to be happy about. But if you asked me if I had peace and joy and rest or forgiveness, I would tell you no way. I didn't. I had the world's happiness. But the difference now is you can be Bo Manus with stage 4 cancer and have peace and joy and rest. I've been in the hospital for open heart surgery with a smile on my face, counting down 10, 9, and then you're asleep with a smile on my face. To live as Christ, to die as gain. To be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. And the Bible says, eye hath not seen, nor ear heard, nor the mind of man imagined the things that God has prepared for those who love him. And our light and momentary troubles, and this is coming from Paul, who's been lashed 5 times, the 39 lashes. He's been stoned, he's been beaten. He says, for our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal weight of glory, which far surpasses them all. So we look not on that which is seen, but that which is unseen. That which is seen is temporary. That which is unseen is eternal. So I am so grateful and so want my life to be used in the lives of others to live a life that counts for here and for eternity.
Yeah, Nate Carr told me that the Bible means basic instructions before leaving Earth,
Ah,
and yeah, I've always remembered that, and I think, God knows that we're going to make mistakes, and we do make mistakes, and we can, we all fall short of the glory of God and all that. But I think a big part of the Bible, and can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's more about like what will happen to your life if you don't follow these things that God has laid out for you. You know,
Well,
it always opens the wrong doors. Um,
well, and that's the thing. I'm writing this down, by the way. Basic instructions before
before,
leaving Earth.
yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Nate's probably told me that, but I've a great memory, but it's short. So, uh, no, the fact of the matter is, and one of the reasons I'm a follower of Christ is in keeping with the reality of lives that we're sinners, that we sin against our own conscience, that which we know to do, we don't always do, that which we know not to do, we do. We sin against others, we sin against our Creator. God is a holy and just God. He cannot wink at sin. And so there's only two people that can bear our sin: the sinless, spotless Lamb of God, which is Jesus, which is why John the Baptist, when he sees him, said, "Behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world," or us. God does not take delight in the death of the wicked, but rather that they should turn from their sin and live. But if we refuse him, if we refuse that forgiveness, then we bear the weight of our own sin. And Jesus says, what's it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? If you're here and listening and you're not a follower of Christ or a believer, read some stuff from Lee Strobel. Watch some of his movies. I'm drawing a blank right now. You remember his movie?
The Case for Christ and the
Yeah,
faith,
Case for Christ, or
Case for Faith.
or Josh McDowell, Evidence That Demands a Verdict. The answers are there. Reach out to me. And I've studied quite a bit. Interesting enough, when I was apart from God, I still had incredible respect for the Bible because I had done so much homework. The answers are there. God has given us great evidences, for Him and for Christ. So you can ask those questions. Nothing wrong with it. You can have those doubts. Just don't go, show me, tell me, with your hands over your eyes or your hands over your ears.
Can you give some examples of how you obviously believe in the Bible and all those things, but can you give some examples of feeling God?
I'm sorry?
Can you give some examples of like feeling God's
Oh,
presence, or
yeah. And
things
so,
that can only be explained by God?
yeah, absolutely. Well, the peace that passeth understanding, going into open heart surgery with the past, as I had for many years, having turned from God, spurned God, hurt others. And I will say, all the time doing that while wanting, in one sense, to have students and citizens and have people live good lives, but yet at the same time, I'm a sexual whore. Okay. So, say that question once again. Sometimes I get carried away.
Just an example of feeling God's
Yes,
presence.
yes, exactly. The peace that passeth understanding. How can Bo Manus embrace? Now he's going in for chemo. Humanly speaking, on paper, he's going to die. Okay. But he has peace. He has joy. He has a smile on his face. He has hope. And even if he dies, he wants to glorify Christ in his death. So to have that despite circumstances, with the knowledge of, Paul says, and this is, he doesn't know whether he's going to live or die, they're after him. But this happened that we might not rely on ourselves, but on God who raises the dead. So Paul knows that God uses these circumstances to strengthen us in our faith. It's like, why did we make our guys do stadium steps with a guy on their back at OU Stadium? To learn how to persevere and fight through the pain and fight through the toughness and fight through the hard times. Well, the same thing with our faith. God uses these things to mold us and make us strong and mighty men of God, okay, so that we learn to rely on Him. Even in our sin, we repent and we look to Him because we know that's why life is found. I would say the peace that passeth understanding. I would say the truths of the Bible that are so incredible and factual, and then also we're involved in a mission to Iran. The church in Iran is the fastest growing church in the world. And to see what's going on there in dreams, visions, and healings, I could tell you story after story. It is amazing. And so those people, my friend Cyrus, they say Cyrus, came to Christ with the miraculous healing of his daughter, uh, and went around in his taxi cab playing Christian music, and people like in Iran, and they're going, "What is this, Isa?" It's about Isa, which is how they say Jesus, and then eventually is handing out Bibles till he goes to prison. But he does that because he has the peace of Christ. My friend Matthew, an Iranian who was hopeless, suicidal, no hope in radical Muslim, no hope in Islam. They don't have a savior that loves you such that he would die for your sin. And now he's put in a 9x4 cell, and he has to sleep with his head by his urination and defecation bucket, because on the other side is a light that's on 24 hours a day. And when I ask him, Matthew, were you ever mad or bitter towards your captors? He looks at me like I have three heads. And so, no, for Esau. I love them for Esau. And when he's put in the main prison, all the people said they're going to kill him because he's following Esau, he winds up leading many of them to Christ because they see the love of Christ in him. So there are so many things in so many ways. Those are but a few.
Yeah. Yeah, I've felt it myself, and sometimes I think people get frustrated when you don't feel it all the time. But that's, that's faith, and I've definitely felt it and been given examples of it, and things that to me can only be explained. I told you on the phone the story about Mark Schultz and that message he sent me, and
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and and um, yeah, that can only be explained. You can say that's a coincidence, but if it is, it's, you know, I suppose it's possible, but very unlikely that that wasn't a direct, um, that wasn't a direct communication from God. And I should just tell the story real quick because people are probably like, "What the heck are you talking about?" I was sitting in my car one night and I was thinking about quitting comedy, and I've told this story before, but if you haven't heard it, I was sitting in my car for like 20 minutes after this show I didn't care for, and Mark Schultz messaged me out of the blue, and he's been on my podcast, and I consider him a friend, but at this point, he had never once messaged me, and he messages me out of the blue saying, "Don't you ever quit comedy?" And then I message a friend of mine who had never believed in God until recently, and I explain the story to him, and I say, "God is real, Kurt." And then I get another message from Mark Schultz that says, "God is absolutely real." And
Mhm.
I'm just like in my car by myself, like, that can only be a direct message from God, like, to me. And I could bring up other stories like that, but I have several. Um, and so yeah, and I pray all the time for God to put the right people in my path, and just some of the things that you've said make me know that this was an answered prayer just to talk to you, and I feel like I could message you or call you anytime and you would probably talk to me about whatever I have questions about, and I hope that you would because I probably will.
I would delight in that. And let me add also in the Christian life, it's relational. We pursue God in His Word, in prayer, in corporate worship, in the corporate singing, and in the preaching of the Word, and in the fellowship of the saints, because it's iron sharpening iron. But part of it is our lives are transformed, Romans says, by the renewing of our minds as we begin to see things as God sees them. And when we do that, then we have hope in the most hopeless situations. Then we can be assured of our forgiveness even when we're stumbling and bumbling. So it's all found in relationship. And we need to become men of the word and women of the word so we can see things as they really are.
Yeah. Well, I think that's probably a great place to end this. I'm sure you have things to do, and I do too. But I could talk about this kind of stuff and wrestling all day. I love this sport for the kind of people it makes, and And a lot of believers are wrestlers, and I don't think that's a coincidence.
Yeah.
Isn't there a story in the Bible about Jacob wrestling? Uh, was it God or an angel that Jacob wrestled?
Well, the angel of the Lord, who is God.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Now,
even God is a wrestler.
yeah, yeah. And you see many of the Olympians, and one of the things they learn in this, and it doesn't mean you come to Christ, you're going to be a better wrestler. God may want you to be a missionary. Okay. But when whatever you do, the Bible says, work at it with all your heart is working for the Lord and not for men, since you'll know that you'll receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. So when you learn to wrestle for the Lord, there's not this, I have to win, because this means everything to me. Your wrestling is unto the Lord. You can wrestle with a freedom and from fear, because your goal is to be faithful. And when you wrestle like that, you generally do better than when you're tied up in knots about how you have to win or else. You see,
Yeah.
that's what a lot of the great ones will tell you. So many of our Olympians are followers of Christ.
That's what I wish people who hate on that stuff understood. Like whenever I see comments on wrestling posts and they make fun of somebody for praising God, and they think that, like, oh yeah, God's the reason you won that match. And it's like, I'm not saying that God is pulling the strings on who's going to win the match. They're thanking him for the ability that he's given them and the peace that he's given them to be the best they can be. And it's because of their faith in him. It's not because they prayed for the win and so God was like, all right, you prayed better than him. It's
Yes.
that's not the case, and it drives me crazy when I see that stuff.
Well, let me give a little constructive criticism of my own. I'm grateful even when I see these young wrestlers who win and they point up, but you can't point up and then start moving your fingers towards yourself to give you praise and adulation and glory. So it's either for God or it's not. Shane Valdez, three-time All-American, and his brother Dane, and this was when they made the rule that you could shake the coach's hand. You didn't do that before. And they would always go over and shake the coach's hand. And I said to him one time, hey, I don't want you doing that anymore. And they're like, why, coach? I thought you would like that. I do. But you only go when you win. If you want to demonstrate sportsmanship, you got to go when you win and when you lose. And they got that. So, yeah.
Yeah. Did they start doing it even when they lost?
Both, absolutely, and both great young men. Dane was a one-time All-American, struggled with injuries, and Shane was a three-timer. I would say would have been a four-timer, but the year he wasn't an All-American, that's the year they made one weigh-in with a 7-pound weight allowance, and he was too small. An Olympian came out of like retirement, and he was just way too big for him, and of course, he may differ with that. And of course, I can't guarantee that Shane would have won, but I believe he would have been a four-time All-American. But he was a great one, great heart, great competitor.
Awesome. Well, I'll let you go, man. I really appreciate your time and doing this, and this will be out next week, and I'll let you know for sure, and you can share it and all that. I appreciate it, and yeah. So enjoy the rest of your day, and if you talk to Bo Manus, make sure you tell him I said hello. I messaged them a couple days ago, but yeah, I would
I will
appreciate that.
today, and I'll turn everybody on to your podcast. What a great interview, and I thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate you. You have a great day, and God bless you.
Lord bless you as well. Bye-bye.
Thanks, buddy. Bye-bye. All right, everybody. Great Jack Spates. I really enjoyed that. I hope you guys did too. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and yeah, keep watching wrestling, and get your kids encouraged to hopefully do it. And you can meet great people like this, and the wrestling world is full of them. And so I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did. As always, go to makingithappen.com, help out little Bo Macon and his family, and God bless all of you, and take care. Goodbye.